Welcome, everybody. Thank you for being here with me. Today, I want to give you, if something that would really help you in your life, and I had to give you a tool. And this tool would be perception and how you perceive things within your life. Perception to me is everything, because how you perceive something will determine on how you intake it within your mental state. And through also, once you put that into you, when you perceive something, whether it be through any of your senses or just internally through that instinct, right? Your gut feeling. Before I start going into it, let's just get into some of the basics and lay down the foundation. Let's get to it. You know me, got the little envelope here, everything we need. Title, Your Perception. Description. Your perception is everything. How you see and perceive everything in your life will truly determine your reality. And what I mean by that, your reality, is because think about this. If you always look at things in a negative aspect, right? Just like we said here, how's that going to determine your reality? You look at things in a positive aspect. How's that going to still determine your reality? Now you look at everything in, let's say you're like, hey, Rube, I'm a realist. I'm going to have bad days and good days. Fine. Then you look at everything in a balanced perspective. Definitions. Just like the title, your perception. Belonging to you or associated with any person in general. So it could be your perception or the perception of people around you. Definition of perception. A way of regarding, understanding, or interpreting something or a mental impression. I'm gonna go off a little bit sidebar. Mental impression is whether you be in a relationship with your significant other or a family member or your child, and a lot of times you may perceive something and think it's like that. And what happens when it's not? Now you realize, oh man, I made a mistake. It was not what I saw or what I heard or what I could go on and on with your perception. A little note on that is, even though you now know it's wrong, what happened? Just like I said here, it made where do we have it? Mental impression. So regardless or not, you made that mental impression. You must be careful with this throughout your life, because certain mental impressions will come up or afflict you. You might say, some people say either a trigger or a memory. It could go on and on and on. That's why I said the key to this, if I had to give you anything in life, is something that you could really succeed with. Because this goes down to, people talk about this, life coaches, into all aspects of your life, whether it be with positive affirmations, your thought process, your visualization, things you do before you wake up in the morning, things you do before you go at night. Perception. Perception is a big thing. Another thing about it is also what you intake within your life. If you are always in an atmosphere, again, perception could be places, people, or things, or yourself. And whatever you do within your life, you intake with you, right? You keep it, it puts a mental impression. Whether you know it or not, that will affect you, depending on what you perceive and what you intake. What I really want to get into is that a key factor for me when I started to learn perception, and this is, look, I'm not just going off the whim, this scientific experimentation that proves that all right, let's get a little bit into it scientifically. If you wanted to look up something, look up what's called a double slit experiment. And what they did when they did this double slit experiment, they noticed that when the object or whatever it was not visually being perceived by the other person, it reacted a different way. When the person, and they recorded it, them actually looking at it in the experiment, when you look up it'll make more sense to you. It might be a little bit off, but when they were perceiving what it was they were looking at, it reacted. Can you imagine that? So when it was not being looked at, it was performing in a different way. When it was being looked at by whoever it was, that person, it behaved differently. Can you imagine that? So your perception can have an effect on you and others by, this will blow your mind because the thought process of what you're given. For instance, maybe you see someone and they just set you off and you're like, ah. And that person turns around, happens to look at you. They felt that perception, they felt that energy, they felt all that going on. A good example would be like you go to a party, you haven't seen a good friend in a while or a family member, and you both lock eyes and you're like, oh, you start screaming and you hug each other. That's a perception you have because that's the energy, that's everything that comes about. Now I understand a lot of this you may not be able to grasp it, but that's okay. Like I always say in many videos, it might not be now. Maybe you watch this video later on, you go, oh my gosh, I understand what I Came by Rubey was saying. If you can master perception within your life, everything around you, you'll be unstoppable because you'll be able to control your intake, what you put in. I'm trying to think, I want to think of a couple of good scenarios I want to give you and also go a little bit deeper into this. When I started to learn perceptions, you start to hear, for instance, all right, where I grew up, you had your nice areas and a little bit of a rough area, and people knew about this area because it was next to another city that was a rough city. Two tough places. And they would say, well, where are you from? And I would say, here. And they would go, oh, that's tough. See, perception. They may have never been there, but they're going off perceptions or maybe actions or words or thoughts of other people explaining to them, man, I went here, this and this, and they hear it over and over and over, and they build a perception, whether it be of a person, place, or thing. When you take all of this out of it and leave the perception like a blank canvas, you should experience anything when you go throughout your life, or your experiences with whoever you interact with no perceptions. Do not put any of that involved in it. For instance, I've been many places where I've had hard times, and some people would be with me and say, oh, Rube, that's not right. I gotta say, whoa, don't say nothing. Don't do that. Don't get involved. I understand. And everyone could be around the room and see it. But the way you perceive it is how you can control the situation. Imagine that. Everyone else sees something and you see it in a different way. You now have the power and control within yourself, and at that moment, to handle it the way you want. Will you do it in a peaceful and kind manner, or will you simply go crazy and start yelling and say, hey, what's your problem? Why did you say this? Why did you do that? Why did you look at me like that? Then that stems back to ego. See how much perception involves everything? Perception, of course, involves all your senses, right? Smell, hearing, vision, touch, feelings, emotions, tons of things. And like what I said here, your perception is everything. Remember this, how you view your own life and everything around you will determine your own reality. So if your perception is always that in effect where, why does this always happen to me? Why am I always going through these problems? This, and that. You have already built your perception around this thought process, which might not be sometimes in the best of places. You hold the key. You hold the key to your own happiness, your own demise, or what it is you want to achieve. Nobody else. If you're dependent on other people, that's great. I hope it works for you. But in the end, look yourself in the mirror. See really who you are through your own perception. Work on that person. Work on them. That way, when you work from the inside and you work your ways outward, and you're going to give a great, how would I say it? Oh, man. Just a great energy, a great flow, just to everyone, everything around you. And not to give those people a bad perception of yourself. You don't want them coming back like, man, him or her is a no-go. Right? How they say in Spanish, no bueno. You don't want to be the no bueno. You want to be good. You want to be the good version of yourself. Like Superman, you had the bad and the good one, right? No, no, no. Be that good version of yourself. And that starts with first, like that key I said, start perceiving your life in all different ways. In everything. Start slowly. Pick one area of the thought process that you want to start to perceive differently. Forget about the whole grand picture. A lot of people like to just want to jump in whatever they do in life and say, I'm going to tackle this, which is great. From my own personal experience, everyone is different. I've always started with small steps. And before I know it, I hit the grand one and I'm like, wow, look, I didn't even know that I already hit it because of what? Changing my perception, my outlook on life, my intake. Remember what I said? Everything that you take in, watch what you do. Where are you at? The places, what you watch, what you read, the music you listen to. It goes on and on and on. The things you listen to, the people you hang out with, the speech. What are they saying? What are they doing? What are they implementing? What are they giving to you within your mind? Right? Another scenario, you're involved. Let's say, I'll be honest with you, in a bad relationship. Male, female, doesn't matter. Whoever it is, the other one's constantly yelling, constantly screaming. You're yelling back and forth. You're doing this. You are creating a what? A platform for destruction. Your perception and their perception is that of just anger and yelling and that of non-happiness. Turn it around. Sometimes you'll be blown away because if you don't interact with that their other perception of what is going on and your perception is different, it won't vibe. It's going to stop. If you see that little clue in that parable, you understand what I'm saying. It will stop. It all depends on you. Are you going to keep going forth with your ego and pushing forth? Or like I said, when I was in that crowd and people said, oh, really, I can't believe they said this. I said, don't worry about it. Don't say nothing. Let it be. Because my perception was different and I dissolved the whole thing within my mind. I was at peace. Doesn't matter who, what, when, who said what. Doesn't matter. Because the way I perceived it was totally different from the way everybody around me perceived it. So make your perception work for you. I came by Rubey. Take care.